My father always said that the silence of a poor man is mistaken for contentment, while the silence of a rich man is seen as power. For 20 years, I was that silent poor man. I cleaned the floors of the very building where my name was supposed to be engraved in gold. They didn't just take my money. They took my identity, my dignity, and the woman I loved. They thought they buried me, but they forgot one thing. I am a seed. And today, the harvest begins. My name is Arthur Vance, though for the last 2 decades, the world knew me only as 402, a number stitched onto a gray jumpsuit. If you're watching this, you've probably seen the headlines about the collapse of the Sterling Empire. You've seen the photos of the man in the tailored suit walking out of the courthouse while the world burned behind him. That man is me. But to understand the fire, you have to understand the ice that came before it. It started in the summer of 2004. I was 24, ambitious, and terminally naive. I had just graduated at the top of my class, and I had a patent that was going to change the way clean energy was stored. I wasn't looking for billions. I was looking for a way to make sure my mother never had to work a double shift at the hospital again. That was my first mistake. Thinking that excellence is a shield. In the world of the elite, excellence is just a target. I met Julian Sterling at a charity gala I wasn't even invited to. I snuck in wearing a rented tuxedo that smelled like mothballs and cheap gin. Julian was the sun that everyone orbited around. He was handsome, charismatic, and possessed that effortless arrogance that only comes from 3 generations of stolen wealth. When I pitched him my idea in the hallway near the restrooms, he didn't laugh. He listened. He put a hand on my shoulder and said the words that would ruin my life: "I've been waiting for someone like you, Arthur." Within a week, I was the chief technology officer of a shell company he created. I thought I was a partner. I thought I was a brother. Julian introduced me to his sister, Elena. She was different from the rest of them. Or so I believed. She looked at me not as a charity project, but as a man with a soul. We fell in love in the quiet corners of expensive restaurants, away from the flashbulbs. I gave her my heart, and I gave Julian my patent. The betrayal didn't happen with a bang. It happened with a signature. It was a Tuesday morning. The FBI swarmed my small apartment before I had finished my coffee. They didn't ask questions. They showed me documents. Documents I had supposedly signed, transferring illegal offshore funds into accounts linked to domestic terrorism. My signature was there. My handwriting was there. Even the digital timestamps matched my laptop. I looked for Julian. He wouldn't take my calls. I looked for Elena. She was on the news that night, standing next to her brother, looking into the camera with tears in her eyes as she talked about how shocked she was that the man she loved was a monster. I was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. No bail. No mercy. The judge called me a traitor to the American dream. As they led me out of the courtroom in chains, I saw Julian in the back row. He didn't look angry. He didn't look triumphant. He looked bored. He checked his watch, adjusted his silk tie, and walked out before the gavel even hit the wood. Prison is not like the movies. There are no heroic brawls in the yard that earn you respect. There is only the slow, grinding erosion of your humanity. For the first 5 years, I was a ghost. I spoke to no one. I ate the gray slush they called food, and I stared at the cracks in the ceiling of my cell. I counted those cracks until I knew every millimeter of them. But in the 6th year, everything changed. I was assigned to work in the prison library. It was a dusty, forgotten room filled with outdated law books and cheap romance novels. And there, sitting in the corner, was a man named Elias. Elias was 80 years old. He had been in that prison since before I was born. He was the only person the guards didn't touch. Not because they feared him, but because he was the one who managed their taxes, their divorces, and their dirty secrets. Elias was a master of the one thing Julian Sterling thought I lacked, the architecture of shadows. One afternoon, Elias watched me staring at a newspaper clipping of Julian opening a new skyscraper in London. He didn't say anything for an hour. Then, he leaned over and whispered, "You're looking at the fruit, boy. If you want to kill the tree, you have to poison the roots." I told him I had nothing. No money, no friends, no life. Elias laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. "You have the one thing Julian Sterling can never buy," he said. "You have time. And you have the memory of exactly how he did it. Revenge is just a math problem, Arthur. You just haven't found the right variables yet." For the next 10 years, Elias became my mentor. He didn't teach me how to fight. He taught me how to listen. He taught me how the global banking system actually works, not the way they teach you in business school, but the way it works in the dark. We spent thousands of hours analyzing the Sterling family's holdings. We mapped out their suppliers, their creditors, their political allies. We found the weakness. Julian was greedy, yes, but he was also vain. He wanted to be a king, but he hated being a gardener. He outsourced everything. He built his empire on a foundation of people he considered beneath him. Janitors, drivers, secretaries, IT specialists. The invisible people. Elias taught me that an empire is like a giant clock. If you remove the king, the clock still ticks. But if you fill the smallest gears with sand, the whole thing grinds to a halt. In 2018, Elias passed away. He died in his sleep, clutching a book on Roman history. He left me nothing but a small, hand-carved wooden box and a piece of advice: the best way to win a war is to make your enemy believe he has already won. In that box was a list of names. Not of billionaires or senators, but of people Elias had helped over 40 years. A disgraced accountant in New Jersey. A tech genius who got caught hacking the wrong server in San Francisco. A logistics manager for a global shipping company who owed Elias his life. I spent the next 2 years using the prison's monitored messaging system to reach out to them. I didn't ask for money. I asked for information. I became a master of coded language. To the guards, I was just a lonely man writing letters to old friends. To the world outside, I was building a ghost network. By the time my 14th year in prison arrived, I knew Julian Sterling's life better than he did. I knew that he had expanded the company into AI-driven logistics. I knew that his sister, Elena, had married a duke from a minor European royal family to solidify their social standing. And I knew their secret. Julian wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was laundering money for a cartel that operated out of Eastern Europe. He was desperate to maintain the lifestyle he had stolen from me. Then, the miracle happened. Or at least, that's what the world thought it was. A young, idealistic law student in Boston was doing a thesis on wrongful convictions. She found my case. She found the anomalies in the digital timestamps that the original defense lawyer, who, as I later found out, was on Julian's payroll, had conveniently ignored. The case was reopened. The FBI's own internal audit revealed that the lead investigator on my case had retired to a villa in Tuscany just 6 months after I was locked up. The evidence didn't just suggest I was innocent. It suggested a massive, coordinated conspiracy. The day I walked out of those gates, I didn't look back. There were no cameras waiting for me. I had made sure of that. I wanted to be a ghost for just a little while longer. I had $200 in my pocket and a brain that was now a weapon of mass destruction. My first stop wasn't a lawyer's office. It was a dusty basement apartment in Queens. That was where the accountant lived. His name was Marcus. He looked at me like he was seeing a dead man walking. "Elias said you'd come," Marcus whispered, his hands trembling as he poured me a glass of cheap whiskey. "But Arthur, you're playing with fire. Julian is more powerful than ever. He owns the city." "Let him own it," I replied, looking at the wall of monitors Marcus had set up. "A man who owns everything is terrified of losing even a single brick. We aren't going to take his money, Marcus. We're going to take his reality." The plan was simple in its cruelty. We wouldn't attack Julian directly. We would attack his reputation. In the world of high finance, your name is your currency. If the world stops believing in you, your stock price doesn't just drop, it vanishes. We started with the invisible people I mentioned earlier. I spent the next 6 months working as a janitor again. Not because I had to, but because no one looks at the man emptying the trash. I worked in the building across from Sterling's headquarters. I watched. I learned the patterns of his security detail. I learned which floor the servers were on. One night, while Julian was at a gala celebrating his company's 20th anniversary, the same company built on my patent, I was in a server room 3 blocks away. Marcus had bypassed the firewall using a backdoor that Elias's contacts had built years ago. We didn't delete anything. We didn't steal money. We just planted a small, dormant piece of code. A logic bomb. It was designed to do one thing: every time a transaction over $10 million was made, a tiny fraction, just 0.01%, would be redirected to an account in the name of Julian's biggest rival. Not for us to keep, but to create a trail of breadcrumbs that looked like Julian was planning to betray his own board of directors. As the weeks went by, Julian became increasingly paranoid. He couldn't explain why his numbers were slightly off. He started firing his most loyal people. He started screaming at his board. The Sun King was starting to burn out. But then, Elena called me. She found me sitting on a park bench near the docks. She looked exactly the same, only colder. Her eyes were like chips of blue ice. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. "I know you're behind the glitches, Arthur," she said, her voice a sharp blade. "Julian is falling apart. If you stop now, I can give you $5 million. You can go to an island and forget we ever existed. If you don't, well, you remember what happened last time." I looked at her, and for the first time in 20 years, I felt nothing. No love. No hate. Just a profound sense of clarity. "Elena," I said quietly. "You think I want money? I spent 14 years in a cage because of a signature. I didn't come back for the money. I came back to see what happens when the mask falls off." "You'll die for this," she hissed. "I already died in 2004, I replied. "You're talking to a man who has nothing left to lose. And that makes me the most dangerous person you will ever meet." She walked away, and I knew the war had entered its final phase. They were going to try to kill me. Again. But this time, I wasn't the prey. I was the bait. The next day, the logic bomb went off. But it didn't just move money. It released every single email, every voice recording, and every offshore bank statement Julian had ever tried to hide. It went to every major news outlet in the world simultaneously. But there was one document at the very top of the pile. The original blueprint for my patent, with my real signature, and a video file Julian had kept as a trophy, a recording of him and Elena laughing in his office the night I was arrested, bragging about how easy it was to break a nobody like Arthur Vance. The world watched. And then, the world turned. The aftermath was not an explosion, it was a funeral for a giant. Within 48 hours, the Sterling Empire's stock price was zero. The board of directors issued a statement of complete disassociation. The banks froze every account tied to the name Sterling. Julian, the man who once moved markets with a whisper, was now a pariah. I watched it all from a small, rented room in a motel that smelled of old cigarettes and rain. I wasn't celebrating. Revenge is a cold meal, and it doesn't fill your stomach, it only numbs the hunger. Julian tried to run. He thought his private jet was waiting for him at Teterboro. He thought his pilot was loyal. But loyalty is a luxury of the rich, and Julian was no longer rich. When he arrived at the hangar, his pilot wasn't there. I was. He looked pathetic. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and he was carrying a leather briefcase like it was a life raft. When he saw me sitting in the pilot's chair, he stopped. The briefcase hit the floor. "How much?" he croaked. "How much to let me go, Arthur? I have accounts you didn't find." "Millions. Just name a price." I stood up and walked toward him. I didn't rush. I wanted him to feel every second of my approach. "You still don't get it, Julian," I said. "You think everything has a price because you've never valued anything that was free. Your integrity, your word, your sister's soul. You sold them all. I made you," he screamed, his voice cracking. "You were a nobody. I took your little idea and turned it into a god. You should be thanking me." I looked him in the eye. "You didn't make me, Julian. You just broke the shell. What came out was something you weren't prepared for. You taught me how the world really works. You taught me that power isn't about what you own, but about what you can endure." The police sirens were close now. I had called them the moment he entered the airport perimeter. I didn't want him dead. Death is an escape. I wanted him to have exactly what I had, a number, a gray jumpsuit, and a ceiling with cracks to count for the next 20 years. As the officers tackled him to the ground, he looked at me one last time. There was no more fire in his eyes. Only a deep, hollow realization that his entire life had been a lie built on sand. Elena was arrested the next morning at the border. She tried to claim she was a victim too, but the video evidence was undeniable. The Sun Queen would spend her prime years in a federal facility. People ask me what I did with the money. Because, you see, during those 6 months as a janitor, I didn't just plant a logic bomb. I used the knowledge Elias gave me to short sell Sterling stocks through a series of anonymous offshore entities. I didn't steal his money. I let the market take it from him and hand it to me. I am now one of the wealthiest men in the country, but I still live in a small house by the ocean. I don't own a yacht. I don't wear silk ties. I spent the majority of the fortune establishing a foundation that provides legal defense for the wrongfully convicted. We've already freed 12 men. 12 souls who were buried alive just like I was. As I sit here today, looking out at the waves, I realized that my father was wrong about one thing. Silence isn't always mistaken for contentment or power. Sometimes, silence is just the sound of a man waiting for the right moment to speak. The world will tell you that nice guys finish last. They will tell you that to succeed, you must be a predator. But they are wrong. A predator only knows how to hunt. A survivor knows how to wait. And in the end, the person who can wait the longest is the one who decides how the story ends. My name is Arthur Vance. I was a ghost, then I was a prisoner, and now I am free. Not because the gates opened, but because I stopped letting my enemies live inside my head. If you are going through your own dark tunnel right now, if you feel humiliated, betrayed, or forgotten, remember this: the dirt they throw on you is only there to help you grow. Don't fight the shovel. Use the soil. Because one day, you will rise so high that they will have to look up just to see your shadow. Stay silent. Stay focused. And never let them see you coming.